Okay. Welcome. It's a great turnout. I'm excited to see you all here. I think the diversity of this crowd is excellent too. It really represents the spirit of this state. And I think we're here because of an abiding interest to help others under very difficult conditions, much like the original volunteers who served with Andrew Jackson in the Battle of New Orleans. And I'm Tim Vogus. I'm your host for this evening. You'll learn more about why I'm here in a bit, although the button gives you an early indication of why I'm here. And so for now, I'm welcoming you to a night of discussing, learning, sharing, and strategizing about the Koozer-Kuhn Medical Cannabis Act. We have an inspiring panel of legislators, patients, and parents that I believe will catalyze us into action and arm us with the information to influence effectively. Specifically, what we're going to try to accomplish today is the why the time for the Koozer-Kuhn Act is right now, and that there are real Tennesseans who will benefit from this act. And we're going to talk about what the bill fully entails, how we need to proceed to ensure its passage, and you all are going to play a key role in this, and in tonight especially. We want to hear your personal stories, your connections, your strategies, your questions. And we're also going to proceed tonight with respect for those who aren't yet ready to support this bill, because it's our job to show them that supporting the Koozer-Kuhn Act is not a partisan act, it's an essential act, it's a compassionate act, and it's an act of Tennessee values. It's who we are. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Bernie Ellis, who is the author of the Koozer-Kuhn Act. And he told me just before starting that he's also a proud Vanderbilt alum. So hopefully, yeah. Bernie will also serve as our moderator. So we're going to try to keep this esteemed panel to 5 minutes a crack in order to leave plenty of time for interaction and questions and answers. We'll see how we do. So Bernie, with that, I turn it over to you.
Good evening. I normally start off a presentation by saying if you learn nothing else, you'll learn that all Southerners don't talk slow. So I'm going to try to cover quite a bit of material by way of introduction. To start with, let me introduce Piper Koozer, one of the two namesakes for our bill. And Piper's family had to leave Tennessee in October. She's been on Charlotte's Web for about 2 months. 2 months, and her seizures have declined 75%. She's sleeping through the night for the first time in her life. Why is it time now in Tennessee to reestablish a medical cannabis program here? Well, since the last time we got a good hearing at the legislature back in 2010, 8 more states have passed. This year I expect between 5 and 10 will pass. It's really moving that fast. The Veterans Administration now no longer removes veterans from their pain clinics who test positive for cannabis in states where it's legal. That's a major shift in the VA policy. The National Cancer Institute, one of my former employers, now gives the public 10 pages of information on their website about the role of cannabis and cannabinoids in cancer therapy, a major breakthrough. Since 2010, there have been another 4,500 peer-reviewed medical journal articles documenting the safety and efficacy of cannabis across a number of conditions. 4 separate U.S. governors, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, and 1 independent, have all petitioned the Department of Justice to reclassify cannabis so as not to interfere with their lawfully established programs. And as some of you may know, in June of this past year, the Department of Justice issued what's called the Cole Memo, 4 pages that says the Justice Department will no longer interfere with lawfully established state programs. 70 to 80% of the American public now supports medical cannabis. I don't expect it's any different in this state. The Koozer-Kuhn Medical Cannabis Act will enable a program that we're calling the Safe Access to Medical Cannabis Program. The Safe Access Program looks like this. It's a closed system program. We will allow only farmers who are licensed, trained, supervised, and monitored by the Department of Agriculture to grow. No patient grow, no caregiver grow, it's all licensed farmers. Those farmers may only sell their cannabis to state licensed processors who will also be under the supervision of the Department of Ag. And although our goal is to return cannabis to the pharmacy until it's taken off Schedule 1, we can't do that, so we will set up regulated dispensaries as an interim step. Unlike California and Colorado, we're severely limiting the number of dispensaries so that in the entire Davidson County area, we expect no more than 4 dispensaries to start with. So we're not going to have dispensaries on every corner. What are our goals? If we succeed, safe access patients should be able to access medical cannabis as soon as they're eligible, for as long as they're eligible, without delay. Many states require patients to apply to the state health department for approval. We're going to have our patients registered into the state program at the dispensary the first time they show up, so there'll be no delay there. The medical cannabis made available through our program must be of consistent high quality. It must be safe, effective, reliable, and inexpensive. No street pot meets that definition, particularly the inexpensive part. The production, processing, and distribution of medical cannabis for the Safe Access Program should and will occur under tightly controlled conditions. We define our program as the most tightly controlled model presented so far in the country and the most patient-friendly, both. We are limiting participation in the Safe Access Program to these conditions, and only these conditions. We've added post-traumatic stress disorder recently. We will be one of, I think, only 3 states to start their program with PTSD covered from the get-go. But as you can see, all of these other conditions are serious conditions, and we have specifically said in our bill, no physician may prescribe medical cannabis for any off-label condition. We will not honor a prescription for anyone who does not have one of these conditions. But the state health department will be empowered to systematically add new conditions as we go forward. So we expect the program to grow rapidly. I want to talk a little bit about revenues. One of the ways we're attempting to be patient-friendly is to try to aim for a price of $100 an ounce. Right now in this city, people are paying between $400 and $600 an ounce for the same quality cannabis that we hope to sell for $100. And those monies will be divided as you see. Pay particular attention to the last one. 20% to the state Safe Access Program means 20% to the state of Tennessee. So we start right off with 20 cents of every dollar being returned to the state. According to our bill's fiscal review, we'll be in the black in the second year, and we'll be returning money to the general fund in the second or third year. We expect by year 5, if only 15% of the eligible patients are participating, will be a $500 million a year operation with $100 million coming back to the state. I started with a picture of Piper Koozer with her head bandaged. This is Piper Koozer today, 2 months after starting Charlotte's Web. All of these stories are phenomenal stories, and you will hear some this evening. We have 5 people on the panel, and then I'm going to call on one person in the audience to speak before we open to Q&A, but we'll start with the panel. And I'm going to just introduce everyone now. Paul Kuhn is the widower of Jeannie Kuhn, for whom the bill is named, and he'll speak on behalf of a family that had to deal with cancer. Representative Sherry Jones is our principal sponsor of the bill, Democrat from Nashville. Buddy Burris is a professional musician and caregiver for a wife who has been bedridden with MS for the last 7 years. We then have Representative Joanne Favors, a Democrat from Chattanooga, also an RN, who I believe actually worked with some of the patients who were on Tennessee's last medical marijuana program that went without incident from about 82 to 88. So she'll talk about that. And I omitted and shouldn't have, Representative Favors was the second person to sign on to co-sponsor. We now have 8 co-sponsors after our lobby day today. But we remain in the hunt for red co-sponsors. So we'll talk a bit more about that later, too. Let me sit down and pass the mic on to Paul. And we're going to be fidgeting up here while people speak because we've got to get something else on the computer, but we'll get rolling here.
Thank you, Bernie, and thank you for all the work that you've done on the Koozer-Kuhn bill. I'm honored that my wife's name is on that bill. Like Bernie, I'm also a graduate of Vanderbilt, long time ago. Thank you. It was a lot easier to get in back then. I finished in '65, and I never encountered marijuana when I was here. I think I was just a year or two early. I learned later that there were 2 cliques or groups on campus that were smoking pot, the juxtaposition of which is still kind of amusing. The football players and the theater crowd. Kind of ironic now that those football players, if they were in the NFL league, they might be able to use marijuana in a year or two. The first time I ever ran across marijuana was a couple years later. I had a Navy scholarship to Vandy, and I was on a board hearing the case of a sailor apprehended smoking pot. And I wrote the dissenting opinion because I thought his penalty was not severe enough. I believed all the bad things about marijuana then. And then I returned to another campus, Indiana University, and was stunned to discover that more than half my classmates were smoking pot. I was terrified. I thought, my God, I'm going to school with a bunch of addicts. I'm going to save them. So I went to the library and I checked out the books on marijuana, and I was going to educate them, educate myself, educate them, save them from a life of addiction. And the books said, essentially, all said the same things, kind of a benign substance. So I thought, well, the next time somebody offers me a hit, what you call it, I'll try it. And I tried it, and maybe not the first thought, but the second thought that occurred to me was, this is a bad law. This doesn't make any sense. We are putting people in cages for doing something that's less dangerous than using alcohol. And so I started then working on reforming the marijuana laws, and it's 43 years later, and it's still illegal, but not in 2 states. So we've made more progress in the last probably 20 months than in the previous 25, 30 years. Medically, my wife sort of indulged my interest or obsession, I guess, passion for this issue. And then she came down with it turned out, very virulent form of breast cancer. So we talked to the oncologist who said, well, we now have medication that's just as good as marijuana for nausea, which we knew was not true. So she did the research herself and said, looks to me like it works better, and the legal stuff was going to be, the insurance company was going to pay for it. The legal stuff was going to be about $10,000. So it just happened I had some marijuana in the house, and probably over the course of 3 different treatments, she only used about $50 worth. She went through an induction round of chemo, no nausea whatsoever. High-dose chemo, which is a brutal procedure, stem cell transplant. We now know that really doesn't work for breast cancer, but back then, this is 15, 16 years ago, that was thought to be state of the art. Then the cancer returned, and she had to go through what turned out to be a final round. And she said, I just smell marijuana now, and it makes me think of chemo. And I thought, oh gosh, I've been doing this around her for months. And she said, I'm going to use the legal Zofran. So she went in, took the treatment, took the Zofran. She came home. She'd been home about 20 minutes, and I can see this. Bring me the damn pot. And 1 puff, and it was gone. So there is no better medication for the nausea of chemotherapy than marijuana. But let me read something else. Bernie mentioned the National Institute of Cancer. One more thing. This appeared on their website, I think it's August of 2012. The potential benefits of medical marijuana for people living with cancer include antiemetic effects, appetite stimulation, pain relief, improved sleep. In the practice of integrative oncology, the health provider may recommend medical cannabis not only for its symptom management, but also for its possible direct anti-tumor effects. In other words, we now know, and the government's known since 1964, that was the first research, that marijuana stops cancer. It inhibits it. It cures it. We now know that if you're going to smoke tobacco, you're better off smoking marijuana and tobacco because the government's own research showed that marijuana has a, quote, protective effect against lung cancer. So someday, I guess you can't say people should burn in hell, but I feel pretty strong about this. The government's known for a long time, and they've sat on this research, some of which they funded themselves. It's going on in other countries around the world. But marijuana is not only good for nausea, which I've seen firsthand, the evidence is clear that it stops cancer. So the time has come not only for medical cannabis, but for, I think, the full legalization, and I'm happy that panels and discussions like this tonight are going to advance that cause. Thank you for coming tonight. Representative Jones.
Thank you. I'm Sherry Jones, and I represent the southeast part of Davidson County. I have been a sponsor, either the prime sponsor or a co-sponsor on this legislation for the last 6 years. This is the most discussion that we have ever had about this bill. Normally, it will be assigned to subcommittee, and then suddenly it's gone because you can't move it anywhere. This year, thank heavens, we're at least able to have some discussion. We do not say burned in hell in the General Assembly. No, you don't have to. We generally, well, some of us say things worse than that, and we're just not supposed to say it out loud. But this is a very important piece of legislation, and as evidenced by the way it's spreading across the country so quickly, other states recognize this, other General Assemblies recognize this. It's just us here in Tennessee. We have, and I don't know who you got signed on, Bernie, today, but I signed some people on the floor too, so we may have more than you think. We just can't get those Republicans. Even the Republicans that go, yeah, I'm okay with the bill, but I can't sign on it. That doesn't help us move it along. The Republican Party seems to think that what they want to do this year is pass the hemp bill. We're going to pass the hemp bill. That's a good thing. Well, you know, hemp's okay, but it's a fiber and it makes rope and it makes cloth. But what we're trying to do is really the compassionate thing to do for people across our state that are suffering. My brother had Crohn's disease, and he died 2 years ago. The last 8 months, he was in the hospital. And we were talking about medical marijuana because he was in the hospital, and he's like, man, I wish I had some. Well, you know, I couldn't get it and still be standing here. So, you know, and it broke my heart to know that he could feel better, because when he died, he looked, the look on his face the last few weeks was like he was being tortured. And when we moved him to hospice, that was the only thing that brought him back to looking like my brother looked. So it's important to a lot of people. I am willing to do whatever we can do to get it passed. I just hope that some of y'all know some Republicans that you can persuade to come over to the right side of this issue. It is absolutely the right thing to do for people, and why should we have people suffering who don't need to be suffering?
Well, like you said, I'm Buddy Burris, and I'm at that age, glasses. I'm 65 years old, so I'm one of the senior members here. And like he said, I'm a studio trumpet player here in Nashville. I retired about 7 years ago so I could be my wife's caregiver. I'm a veteran, Marine Corps medevac pilot, Vietnam. That's where I was first. That's where I was first introduced to marijuana, naturally. I mean, there was some good stuff, too. But being a pilot, I had to keep my head clear because I was on call any time. The guys in my crew, they were back there playing Chief Wahoo while I was flying, so. But it just seemed like I had the wrong body chemistry for it. It just didn't match me, and I don't like alcohol either, so I guess I'm a rare breed. But anyway, my wife, I'm here representing my wife, Janice. She turned 60 in December. I've been rubbing it in good, too. She's the love of my life. We've been married 26 years. When I met Jan, she was an aggressive businesswoman. Redheaded, too, and that red hair is no joke. She owned her own business, American Sightseeing, Custom Tours, and I went to work for her. And if there was sexual harassment, I had a good case against her. She was cute. We being one of the managers, whenever a new hotel would open up, being in the tour business, she was always there to check out the properties, and I had to go with her because I was one of the managers. So she cornered me a couple of times. Anyway, and I thought I gave in. Anyway, in fact, she was president of the national president of the American Bus Association, and a graduate of Belmont University, teaching degree. So she's quite a woman. Now, on the history, she was finally diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1993. Up at that time, we thought it was maybe a circulation in her legs, because her legs would start tingling and her gait started to change, her walking. But we were in love, so we always held hands when we went somewhere, and either she was on my arm, so I steadied her. But then it went to where she needed a cane, and from a cane to a walker, and from a walker finally to the wheelchair. Now, Jan's been confined 7 years with no movement from the chest down now. I'm trying not to let this get to me. Very little use of her hands now. She can't even dial a telephone or operate a TV remote. And it's starting to affect her eyes as well. And that TV is her whole world. And she'll tell you if everything's jumping up and down, I can't focus. And she'll look at her eyes are moving left and right. So, don't know what, her optometrist says there's nothing wrong with her eyes, but so there's nothing they can really, it's the MS. Most of the times, I don't know if she's asleep or if she's just laying there because she'll give up and close her eyes and just listen to the TV. And this was one very active woman when I met her. She has to be repositioned about every 30 minutes to keep bed sores down. A bed sore can crop up within 2 hours. And it's a sore that starts from the inside out. It's pressure between the bone and the tissue cuts off the circulation. And once you get a bed sore, it's tough. It's really hard to get rid of. So far, 7 years, we've only had one incident of that, so I must be doing something right. In 2005, she had a major exacerbation. They put her in the hospital, and her neurologist, Dr. Mary Ellen Clinton, came up to me and she says, buddy, I'm sorry, but I'm declaring her in stage 5 years based on her progression. So I think we beat that so far. And anyway, now let's get into some of the benefits of what I'm looking for. I don't know if many of you are familiar with MS, but it's a it's a autoimmune disease where your own immune system is attacking your body. I think they're going to find out eventually it's a virus. And it goes out and it attacks the myelin. It's M-Y-L-I-N. And this myelin goes out throughout your body and it wraps around your nerves. Your nerves could be no more than a piece of string. But most of it is in her brain and her brainstem. There are scar tissue, just white spots in her brain. One of them's about the size of a golf ball. A couple of them just maybe a couple of grapes or this or that. But in women, it attacks your motor cortex part of your brain, and it always takes out your legs first. So it immobilizes you. Now, in the men, I'm sorry guys, but it attacks part of your brain that controls your internal organs, and it'll kill you real quick. Other than being immobilized, the pain is just unreal. It's nerve. It's a nerve pain. It's kind of like when you're sitting too long, your leg goes to sleep or your foot goes to sleep. And when it first starts to wake up, you don't dare move it because you know what it's going to be like. Well, intensify that. Jan's told me several times it wouldn't hurt any worse if I'd put her legs in the fireplace. It's that bad. Of course, and even Montel, we all know who Montel Williams is. He's in an interview, he said that he found himself sitting in a closet, literally drooling on himself from the Oxycontin he was trying to kill the pain with a pistol in his hand. Now, this is a Navy SEAL, tough guy, but he made it through. Right, we tried this and that. We have an excellent neurologist. She'll give you anything I want. We started out with Valium, didn't do a thing. Went from that to Neurontin, that just swelled her up, didn't hurt. It was supposed to be a pain nerve medication, but it didn't help. Finally moved over onto hydrocodone. Well, it helped her sleep. If she's asleep, she's not hurting, but other than that, no real benefit. Finally got to OxyContin. She couldn't even communicate. And our next move was morphine. Now, the OxyContin put her in the hospital. Come to find out Jan's narcotic sensitive. She can't do it. So what have I got left? So, well, her son going to Vanderbilt. And he says, Dad, let me go bring her some marijuana home. And I went, no way. Oh, come on. Of course, he also got on the computer, and I know a lot about MS, and so does he. And he says they're having a lot of results. He said, to help Mom with her pain. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want it in my house. Of course, we're all in the Bible Belt. I mean, gee whiz. So one particular afternoon, he stopped by to check on his mom. And I said, hey, Matt, how about sitting with your mom for a while? I've got a recording I need to get done, and if you don't mind, drop it off the studio on the way back through town. Sure, Dad, go ahead. It wasn't too long, evidently. He went out to his car, got his pipe, got his smoke, stuck it in Mom's face. So I'm sitting in there, and I'm trying to get this recording done. What the heck? I knew that smell, so naturally, Dad comes roaring out of the studio, just ready to pinch somebody's head off. And I look at Jan, she's smiling. Actually smiling. And she's hungry. She wants to eat. And because I have a hard time getting her to eat. If you're confined to bed, constipation's a big problem. She's laxative dependent. So she don't want to put it in because she's got to get it out. So getting her to eat is hard. So anyway, I went, hey, Matt, I think you got some, Bubba. You got any more? The problem is, it smells the house up. Well, in my career, and I'm sorry guys, I'm UCLA, so I'm from California, I'm a San Diego kid. But I have, there you go. I still have a lot of buddies out in the studios out in LA, and they all know Jan, and they all have medical marijuana licenses. Now, out of the 5, I think 3 of them have legit reasons. The other 2, I'm not quite sure about. But they have it, and they all know Jan, and they'll call up, and these are first call studio trumpet players in LA. All of my friends are trumpet players, even the women. And they'll call up and say, put the phone over by Jan, and they'll pick up the horn and play her a ballad or something. Or Gary will play what the licks he did on the last Earth, Wind, and Fire album or something like that. So they treat her very special. And she calls them her little trumpeteers. But and it's weird to have men call you and say, tell your wife I love her. Okay. So anyway, one day I received a package, FedEx package. It's from LA. They didn't recognize the name. Opened it up, big old lollipop, about 3 of them, and 2 chocolate chip cookies. Oh, somebody said, Jan, some candy. But then I noticed the label on it for medical use in the state of California only. I think I know what this is. Because the main problem with Jan and her pipe is she stays congested anyway. And after she takes her couple little hits of that pipe, and this is only maybe every other day, maybe every 3 days, it's not a constant, and she doesn't lay there and play Chief Wahoo or anything like that, but when the pain really gets bad, she wants her pipe. So I said, hey, look what the guy sent you. She says, well, give me one. And I could tell from her face that she was starting to hurt. The tears hadn't started yet, so I handed her that lollipop. She didn't like the chocolate chip cookie. She didn't like that at all. So I made the mistake of holding on to it and sticking it in the refrigerator for backup. But about 20 minutes later, she's smiling. Well, we're going to have lunch. I said, hey, this is good, and she's not congested. It helped. Went on, and after a while, of course, everybody in L.A., how's Jan? And nobody would admit to sending the package. Well, that's a smart move. I mean, you get a lot of trouble for that. So I gave everybody the Jan report. I said, well, somebody sent her some candy, and it's helping. Oh, that's cool. Okay. Well, I went away, I guess a couple of months later, finally, she was out of them. I got another package. The FedEx man stayed at my door. Now, being stuck in the house, I've got all kinds of hobbies. I mean, amateur radio control airplanes, I'm building an ultralight in the garage, rebuilding motorcycles and stuff like that. But anyway, this other package comes, and dummy me didn't pay attention that there's no FedEx truck in my driveway, and this is not my regular driver. So when I accepted the package, it was Mount Juliet Police Department. Oh boy. And I mean, they came in SWAT team, guns pulled. I thought they were making a major drug bust. But once they got in, it was like, oh, how do we get out of this? But they couldn't. Well, the grand jury indicted me, and I'm serving 6 years probation. So now I'm a felon. A Marine vet, a felon. So, sorry, I can't vote anymore. I've lost that. My Second Amendment went right out the door. So I can't own a gun. I can't even be in the same house with a gun. The law says if you're in that house and there's a weapon in that house, you have possession. And gentlemen, that's 5 years federal. So that's gone. Okay. To kind of end this up, that was the risk part of it. Personally, I'm not really in for legalizing marijuana across the board as far as recreation, and I'm strong against alcohol. But this, I need it, mainly for the delivery system. And I applaud each and every one of you. You've marked yourself. Next election, this is coming up. Yes, sir it is. But may the Lord be on your side and maybe a positive reaction. But thank you.
That was an awesome testimony, wasn't it? As an advanced practice nurse with more than 45 years of experience, I can honestly, truthfully say that enough research has been conducted. We know the value of the medicinal use of marijuana. We know that. We've got to overcome some of the stigmas that have been attached to this. I was one of those who was adamantly opposed initially, but I began to see people, just as my friend here described his wife experienced. I went through a period when we were conducting some research at the hospital there in Chattanooga where I worked, and just suddenly it stopped. We were having excellent results. I would go into the patient's room and he was smoking the marijuana, and it was very tightly controlled. I couldn't understand all of the side effects and all, and I know in retrospect now I was having a contact high too, because we would laugh, and I was anxious to take him his marijuana, and fact is, we didn't know what it was. We didn't know whether he was having the marijuana or having something else, because it was a blind study too, initially. And then we knew what it was, because I'd never smelled it. I hadn't been out of Chattanooga, so I didn't know what it was. But this bill is very well crafted, very well crafted. There are no problems that I see with it if it is enacted tomorrow. I feel that we would not have any problems. I feel that a lot of patients throughout Tennessee would benefit from this. We have some of the sickest, poorest people in the nation right here in Tennessee. Already, we do not provide adequate health care for everyone who needs it in Tennessee. So this would be just a small part in rectifying that. So I'm going to ask each of you to contact your legislators. I don't care whether they're Republican or Democrat, just that they are legislators in the Tennessee General Assembly, Senate, and the House. Tell them that you are a Vanderbilt student. Tell them where you live. Contact your friends and your family. I know all of you have Facebook friends. Contact them. Many times we don't know where we are getting letters from. I've gotten so many about this bill, even before we came back to the General Assembly. And I went ahead and told people I've already discussed it with enough people that I'm going to go ahead and ask to be a co-prime sponsor. And I am happy to be a sponsor of this legislation. And if it means that my position will be in jeopardy, then so be it, because I believe that I will have helped some people to improve their quality of life. I have a daughter-in-law who has MS. This is something that she will benefit from in the future. My father had gastric cancer. I did not know until after he was deceased that he used marijuana to control the nausea and vomiting. Had I known, I'm sure I would have facilitated his use. But he was a kind person, did not want to get me in any trouble, and it was only at the visitation that some of the young fellows told me that everybody called him Granddaddy Joe, that Granddaddy Joe used some marijuana, he used pot, and it helped him. That's why he was laughing many times when I went by to see him. And we don't know what's going to happen to us. We don't know what the future holds for us. We have genetic disorders. You all are here at Vanderbilt, a wonderful institution. We have environmental issues that can cause problems for you. We have transportation system with tractor trailers and all kinds of people on the road now. You don't know what might happen to you. Most of us, as we age, we do develop certain disorders. Some we can control, some we can't. So some of you sitting here tonight, or some of your family members, would probably have to benefit from this. The side effects are not near as serious as some of the so-called legal drugs that we use. I had to have surgery on my spine, and I'm allergic to morphine, and used Dilaudid. Was given some to bring home. I took it twice, and I was so afraid I was going to die that I wouldn't take any more, and I disposed of it. So I feel that there were many more serious side effects from that drug with me than it would have been using medical cannabis. So I thank you for your attendance here this evening. Anything that I can do to help, but you can help us by getting the word out. You've got to spread the word out all over Tennessee, starting with the governor's office, letting them know that you support this because it is a very, very good bill. I support it wholeheartedly. I have doctors who I've worked with for many years who support it also. Some of them are afraid to come out and say, I have clergy who support it, but they are afraid to come out and say, because we are the belt, the buckle of the Bible Belt here in the South. But don't let that stop us from doing what we know is right to do. So thank you again for being here.
Sorry, I'm going to talk about my son, Aiden, who's 11. I'm just texting his mom to tell him to come in. So I'm not an obnoxious student like some of you are texting during class. So I have a real purpose. Okay, because I thought you might want to see him. So that's why I'm here. I have an 11-year-old son, Aiden, and Aiden loves Tennessee. He loves all Tennessee has to offer to him. He loves the aquarium of Chattanooga, that's represented by Representative Favors, and Gatlinburg. He loves the air shows in Smyrna, Lebanon, and Tullahoma. He loves seeing the Black Keys at Bridgestone Arena. He loves Mule Day in Columbia. He loves riding in helicopters in the Smokies. He loves the Railroad Museum in Linville, Tennessee. He loves Marathon Motorworks, especially that water tower there for some reasons I don't fully understand, and the WSM Tower in Brentwood. But Aiden suffers from a rare genetic condition that has caused seizures since he was 5 weeks old. His seizures are devastating, they're violent, myoclonic clusters that have worsened over time, and such that there are now continuous convulsions oftentimes, and many times he's stopped breathing during these seizures. And these seizures have been unresponsive to 18 different medications. To even try some of these medications, we've had to sign waivers that said if he goes blind from this medication, that's on us. The provider of the medicine is protected. And these medications also carry a very heavy psychological toll on him. And in fact, several of these medications he've tried have the word rage associated with them. Keppra rage, Depakote rage, which is not a good thing to have associated with a medicine. And he's also not been helped by a surgery he had. He had a vagal nerve stimulator implanted that would send pulses to his vagal nerve, and has been shown with some kids to help seizures, not with him. He's tried a special seizure diet. That didn't help either. And many nights, his seizures are so severe that we have to administer an emergency medication. He's coming in right now. It's the man. We have to administer emergency medicine called Diastat just to get the seizures to stop. And what Diastat is essentially a concentrated Valium, which we've heard about before, that is both addictive and requires increasing doses to be effective. Some nights the seizures are so bad, we've been told, I'm smiling at him saying my name up there, we've been told that we should give him a double dose of this. So just massive amounts, 40 milligrams of Valium concentrated, given at night. And we're the ones having to make that call as he's having these horrific seizures in the middle of the night. And the seizures have cost Aiden dearly. He desperately wants to tell us much. He has much to say, but the seizures have taken his speech. He's proudly independent in spirit, but the seizures force him to rely on others for help much more than he would like. He's like any other 11-year-old boy. He loves to run and play sports, but the seizures give him severe ataxia and a significant tremor. All of it frequently forces him to retreat into his own world, and it also puts him at the very highest risk of sudden, unexpected death from epilepsy, SUDEP. And my wife, Jen, and I, who's also up there, wait every night with a monitor by the bed, just like you would have for an infant, waiting for the seizures to strike, knowing that they're coming, but unsure whether we'll be able to get them to stop every night. But there's hope, and there's hope in the form of this bill. Koozer-Kuhn would make cannabidiol, CBD, or other potentially helpful and non-psychoactive compounds available to Aiden. High CBD, high cannabidiol, low THC, which we're typically familiar with. So there's no high for Aiden. And if you're worried about him rolling and smoking a joint, he's not going to do it. It will be turned into an oil that can be put into a capsule and just added to his food just like any old medication. So no smoking for him. And there's a lot of supportive research that suggests research on adults and animals have consistently shown the anti-seizure properties of CBD. and is famously documented by Dr. Sanjay Gupta in a widely seen special. Charlotte Figi, a little girl out in Colorado, suffered up to 1,200 seizures a month, but now after taking this high CBD medicine only suffers 1 or 2. Another boy who's very similar to Aiden in a lot of ways, and actually even similar age, 10 years old, named Zakai Jackson, went from having upwards of 200 seizures per night to a year seizure-free on this medicine. A recent survey from Stanford University shows 70% of the kids treated with high CBD strains of cannabis experienced a 50% reduction in seizures. And these are kids for whom an additional medication would usually yield nothing. We've been told, well, we can try another medication. What are the chances of it working? Well, after you've gone through 18, it's asymptotically zero. It's almost zero. And these kids who have been helped by these high CBD strains of medical cannabis have increased alertness, development, better mood, and it's really remarkable. But obviously, there are concerns that remain from some. The representatives are working hard, trying to get other people to sponsor this bill, and they're probably getting a lot of things like, well, we're with you, but it's an election year, right? It's an election year. No one is going to touch this in an election year. Well, I would argue that it's poor electoral strategy to let a child like Aiden suffer one night more, to have the chance of dying, where his parents are sitting up just worried sick every night about him. That's not an electorally sound strategy. More importantly, the electoral argument relies on the myth that this bill is really for Cheech and Chong. It's not for Cheech and Chong. It most certainly isn't. It's for the memory of Jeannie Kuhn fighting her cancer. It's for Buddy Burris and Janice's MS. It's for Jacqueline Patterson battling CP, who we're going to hear from in a minute. This bill is for Piper Koozer and Millie Madison so they can quell their seizures and come back home. This bill is for stopping the seizures of Ryan Gilbert, Corbin Wright, and Wally Peterson, and it's most certainly for Aiden Vogus. This bill isn't about... This bill isn't about abstractions and our fears of what could happen, but about helping those in the greatest need of help during their most desperate hour. And looking at this crowd in all its diversity, this issue is not an electoral loser. We're eager to back those who back us. The majority of Tennesseans, after hearing specific stories about real people, will support this bill. We need to prove that to the legislators. That's on us. Lastly, some people have said publicly that we're not Colorado. Well, we're not trying to be. What this bill embodies is Tennessee values. Tennessee values say we prize family and attract the best from around the nation because of opportunities, community, and quality of life. That's why my family came here. Not to force families to leave when they need us the most. Tennessee values say we give people tools to help themselves, not force them into endless, ineffectual, and costly treatments that make us all worse off. Tennessee values say we take the steps to solve tough problems together, not shy away because we fear the worst. So let's make clear that this bill is pure Tennessee values, that this bill will help people and save lives across the state, and this bill is what people want. Let's pass the Koozer-Kuhn Act.
We are going to have a full half an hour for questions and answers, but before we start, Jacqueline, if you can come up. Jacqueline Patterson has been awake for, I think, 30 hours. She flew in from Bolinas, California, to walk around today and visit with Tennessee legislators with us. We're going to demonstrate for you why I think she's one of the most articulate and persuasive patients for medical cannabis. I asked Jacqueline, I'm asking her now, 2 questions. She'll answer them, and then she'll answer the same 2 questions under the influence of cannabis on film.
Why don't we play the video
First, okay. Here, and before we started, the 2 questions were, Why do you support Koozer-Kuhn, and why have you come all the way from California to do that? You'll see her using a vaporizer pen occasionally through this. That's how she's ingesting cannabis. Okay.
Hey, my name is Jacqueline Patterson, and I am in Nashville, Tennessee today to support the rights of patients whose lives would be immensely improved by the passing of House Bill 1385, the Koozer-Kuhn Act. I support this bill because it means safe, well-regulated access for patients in Tennessee who are currently resigned to black market sources for their medicine and at risk of becoming entangled in Tennessee's correctional system, or who go without their medicine that would remarkably improve their health. In providing safe access to consistent medicine for Tennessee patients, this bill would also create jobs for farmers and produce sizable tax revenues for the state of Tennessee. I chose to make this trip from California to Nashville because I have the ability as a patient to visibly show people how cannabis, the only medicine that I take on a daily basis, works for me. And I believe that medical cannabis patients everywhere should have the right to family, education, employment, and freedom of health, because the rights of one American belong to us all. I met a small child here today who is on 3 prescriptions that have yet to stop his seizures, and I pray that someday soon his parents will be able to give him the medicine that it has instigated Piper Koozer's healthy childhood. I too am a mother. I have 4 children who I have committed to teach that we cannot break broken laws if we are not willing to work to change them. Please support the Koozer-Kuhn Act, House Bill 1385. Thank you.
Okay, now for 2 or 3 minutes, Jacqueline will speak with you.
Hello, how's everybody? Good. I didn't grow up in the South. I grew up in the Midwest. I was ridiculed. I was discriminated. I was discriminated against. And when I was 14, I discovered that marijuana not only made me feel better, but it made me speak up. But it made me speak more clearly and fluently. For the first time in my life, I could put my hair up in a ponytail because I could get my right hand to just quit being so tense. However, at 14, I couldn't really tell my parents that I smoked weed, even though they were probably doing it too. And I was left to find it on the black market. I don't know if you guys do drug testing here, but it is everywhere in Missouri, and and so there is really no way for me to get a job. I got pregnant when I was 17 from by my weed dealer. Yeah, that was fun. And then when I was 18, I had the choice between living in crack-infested public housing or moving in with a friend of a friend whose brother just happened to grow and sell weed. I had taken a break from consuming cannabis for the first year that my son was alive, because good parents do not smoke, or so I thought. Now I think that any good parent, in order to stay a good parent, must at one point or another smoke weed. But I'm sorry. I'm gonna my point is that the nice guy that I moved in with in order to have access to cannabis, the nice guy that I moved in with in order to have access to cannabis in Missouri raped me and almost killed me. The reason that I bring this up is because people with disabilities are 75% more likely to be the victim of a violent crime, and by keeping prohibition in place, we are sending the lambs out to meet the wolves. So please contact your legislators, and if they've already sponsored the bill, please remember to say thank you. And if they haven't, make sure that they remember that they are there to represent you. Thank you.
I was so pleased to have this young woman on my arm as we met with a number of legislators today. I've learned to be polite. She's very direct. So, and I'm glad she was there. Okay, before we get to questions, I just want to ask, do we have any other legislators in the room? A few are going to try to make it. No, okay. We do. Yes, Representative Gloria Johnson from Knoxville, a high school teacher, is one of our co-sponsors. And the only other request I'll make, if we have anyone who's with Vanderbilt's medical school who would like to say something, we'll let you be first. Anyone? Okay. We've got, I'm sorry, we do? Please come down.
All right, so I'm Thomas Davis. I'm a fourth-year medical student, soon to graduate. I'm very excited to ditch the short coat for a longer one because with it comes a little bit more clout. But for whatever I have to say now, for whatever it's worth, I just want to thank the representatives, first of all, and everyone who's standing here and all of you guys for showing support. I think at the end of the day, the underlying principle is that we don't need a society where a government protects us from ourselves. Because I think we all know how to make good decisions for ourselves, and I think the people we've seen, for example, are in their best interest trying to make their lives the best that it can be, and there's great evidence that cannabis does that for many of these people. I would like to encourage you guys, my personal philosophy, not to use the word marijuana, just because it's very derogatory in terms of its history with how it's been kind of attacked the Hispanic heritage of the word. I think it's important that we're aware of that. It's the history of cannabis is not something that we should be very proud of in the United States. And I think it's time that we are honest about the utility and the medical use of this medical drug in society.
Okay, we have a panel and a very attentive audience, so if I can see some hands, we'll get started. Anyone? Yes, and before we start, when people ask me what the high is, I like the definition in the literature now, which is an enhanced sense of well-being. Is how the marijuana high is defined in the literature. That's not a bad situation. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm not with Vanderbilt anymore, but I was an assistant professor of neurology here, so I have a little experience with the brain and the effects of various medications on it. I was a neurology doctor. Now I am a neurology patient. I was injured here by a brain injury patient who, through no fault of his own, accidentally threw me across the room. And then, because of complications of surgery, I ended up disabled and with chronic, severe nerve pain. And if you don't have nerve pain, you really don't know what nerve pain is like. But I can tell you that it's bad, and that most of the medications out there don't work, and that it's been 10 years now, and I'm still not a narcotic addict because of a great fear that I had of becoming that way, and because of the fact that those medications really don't help very much. Cannabis does help, and I don't know what I would have done having lost my entire career, which I spent 14 years studying for. And having suddenly a lot of free time on my hands and a lot of time to focus on pain that was unrelenting and wouldn't let me sleep or function. So I'm all for this as a patient. I'm all for it as a doctor who took care of epilepsy patients. And there is nothing more heartbreaking than to see children who are continuously having seizures when you know there's something that is out there that could help them. Patients with MS who are in horrible pain, and also dealing with the emotional crises that they are going through of having lost their ability to walk or function in society. And so the side effects of cannabis that give you the enhanced sense of well-being, I think, is part of compassionate medicine. And as a neurologist, I've learned that there aren't a whole lot of things that doctors can cure. There aren't a whole lot of things that we do, except that we can help improve patients' quality of life. We can provide compassionate care. And I think that medical marijuana is compassionate care. And I hope that people will realize this and not just label everyone who wants to use it as some type of derelict. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Yes, ma'am? By the way, when I testified to the legislature, I say the 3 common side effects of cannabis use for adults is that we eat too much, talk too much, and laugh too much. And none of those are a problem for a seriously ill person. They're all things that we strive for. Ma'am?
Well, kind of to piggyback off that, as a native Tennessean and Nashvilleian, an Owen student, and a proud Republican, I, especially after hearing this and supporting Professor Vogus in the Senate, and very excited to be in support of this bill, and was wondering if you could give us a little bit more information. I wrote down a lot of statistics and facts that you gave. Is there anything else you can give us to kind of arm us? Because I think for a lot of us in this room who might not have been in support of it and are in support of Professor Vogus, though, came to hear about it and are enlightened. And so is there any other information you could arm us with?
I brought 5 separate handouts that are on the back table. You should definitely get those. We have a short Piper Koozer biography, a Jacqueline biography, 2-page summary of the bill, a piece that's very important, which is the fiscal impact of this. And then we have some of my PowerPoints back there. So be sure to get them, and by all means contact me if you need more.
And thank you for educating us.
Normal Tennessee Facebook page, of course. Lauderdale, Tennessee, and we try to keep current news on that on the Facebook page.
Thank you a lot for educating us tonight. We appreciate
Certainly.
it.
Other comments, questions?
Why is your mustache so glorious?
Could someone from the legislature talk about when the vote is, what the chances of it passing are, what the numbers look like currently, let everybody know about how much work really needs to be done?
Well, I think what we need to do right now is continue lobbying the members. If the bill is introduced, it's in, we have a Senate sponsor, we think, and because we want, you have to have the bill in both houses. So we'll take whoever we can get in the Senate so we can be sure and talk about it. If we don't have a sponsor in both houses, we won't even be able to talk about it. So in the meantime, what we want to do is continue to lobby the members and get them to understand what the legislation is. They still think that we're going to ask babies to smoke marijuana. So we have to explain to them a little more about it, and then we're going to have to come to some sort of understanding. I had one of the chairmen come to me today in the hall, and he said, "Man, I'm going to kill you in committee." And I'm like, "Great, this is looking good." But he's got his stuff all laid out, all of the studies that he's found, where he thinks he can use those against the legislation. And we just have to be prepared for that. And we have to really lean on the other members, because we need the other members to get this through. I think if they did a survey of their constituents, they would find out that their constituency is for it. I talked to a member today who told me that, because I was saying, "Do you want to sign on the bill?" I was a Republican. I said, "Do you want to sign on the bill?" He said, "Not yet." I said, "Well, then do a survey in your district, see where everybody is. That will make you feel better about it, because I guarantee you they're for it." He said, okay, he was going to do that. We'll see if he does, and we'll see if he signs on. But a lot of members, they're not going to be part of the vote unless they're on the subcommittee, the committee, until it gets to the floor, so they're not going to be that involved. So we need to work on the committee members first and get them all in line, but we just have to have enough votes. So I need everybody calling, writing, sending emails. Tell your mother, tell your father, tell your uncle, tell your friends. Contact their members.
If I had to pick on one senator right now, it would be Senator Mark Green, who is a Marine trauma surgeon and ER doc. He entertained 10 of us in his office today. He had already read half the journal articles I'd given him and quoted them back to me. And while I was giving him some of the political numbers, this, folks, is a win position to be on with the body politic today in America. But Dr. Green said, "I don't care about politics, what I care about is science." And I said, "Well, Dr. Green, that's all we want you to care about is science." So if you're looking for a senator to write, it's Senator Mark Green. He represents the Clarksville area. But again, they all need to hear from you, not just him. Other comments, questions?
I have a comment. Is there not a way we can fire those people? We need people like that making our laws, controlling our lives. Why can't we get rid of them?
Well,
Why do we have?
That's why we have elections.
right.
Why is it a matter of election? Can we not get a public referendum to get rid of those treatments?
Well, let me respond to that in two ways. I think the first is, if you're following this issue now nationally, you see that prominent politicians in both parties, we've just had Bobby Jindal come out last week for medical. We had the governor of Texas, Rick Perry, come out for decrim. Both parties are angling to be in front of this issue, not running away from it. But let me say so again, make it clear to your legislators, this is a pivotal issue because it's a symbolic issue. It's an issue that measures your support for science, common sense, and compassion. And we'd like those characteristics to be in our legislature. Let me tell you, though, what one friend of ours in the legislature has suggested. There's only one way for the people of Tennessee to ever be able to vote on this issue. And that's if we submit a constitutional amendment to the Tennessee Constitution enshrining the right to use medical marijuana in the Constitution. As a constitutional amendment, the people vote on that. It takes 4 years normally from the time it starts the process, or 2 years until it ends up on the ballot. But hey guys, the way we're getting run around now, it might take 2 years to do the normal process. So all is not lost. I would love to see a constitutional amendment on our ballot in 2016 or 2018 or whatever, but much more so, I would like to see this bill passed now and not wait for that. Other comments? We've got probably 10 more minutes here, so.
Is it not up to the people? You know, I thought, I'm not all educated, but I thought it's up to the people to help each other. And if that helps people, why is it up to the Congress and all that?
You need people like these people sitting right here, they'll represent you. That's why.
I just thought
That's why. You need somebody that will stand up and do what the people need.
Well, and you know, if we had not built a criminal justice industrial complex in part on the backs of marijuana users, which we've done, you know, this might be a benign exchange between neighbors or friends to solve the problem. But now, for-profit prisons, for-profit substance abuse treatment centers, for-profit drug testing companies, the litany goes on, are making their money off illegal smiles in great part. So, you know, again, we need to press every avenue we can. And there was another question over this way.
Yeah, I want to say something. Besides contacting your legislators, please engage your neighbors, your parents, your aunt, your everybody in the conversation. Because I heard so many times, I'm from a little small village, Granville, Tennessee, Jackson County, it's Mayberry, where the preacher's wife is so involved in the cakewalk and of course doesn't want to hear anything about marijuana. And she's also at the post office. I ran into her and I kept pushing the subject. And she came to me the other day and said, I looked some things up on YouTube and I saw some documentaries, and you know what, I think it's not a bad idea. The preacher's wife. So please, not only the legislators, which of course are the most important ones, engage everybody, all ages, not only your Facebook friends that are the same age, everybody.
Others? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all for being here today and speaking with us and educating us. I know that you probably have a large amount of people who are in support of this and for medical use, but not for recreational use. Can you elaborate a little bit about the safeguards in the bill that would define those parameters?
I will. Many state medical marijuana programs allow patients to grow for themselves, allow them to deputize a neighbor to grow for them. We don't do that. We say only licensed farmers supervised and controlled by the Department of Agriculture will grow. And they, again, the wholesale network is closed in everywhere. We also do not, medical cannabis will be the only medication in the state of Tennessee that physicians cannot write an off-med script. That is, unless they have one of these 13 conditions, a physician may not write a recommendation for any other condition. You know, in Colorado and California, I think they both really have always been hybrid medical recreational programs. And if you look in Colorado, the modal patient in Colorado is a 20 to 25-year-old man who has chronic pain. And I joke with my Tennessee friends who've moved to Colorado, and I said, yes, that's short for the pain of being without chronic. So again, we've structured it in a way that those kinds of abuses should not occur. We do, though, have a mechanism with the state health department that other conditions may be added as we move forward. We really expect, right now, there are 4 times as many people who would benefit from medical cannabis as we're included to start with. So we do expect to roll it out for yes.
Yeah, just a quick comment. In thinking about contacting Senator Green, I'm also in medical school, and one of the first things they talked to us about on day one is do no harm, and that concept that I'm sure you all are familiar with. And coming over to the business school, something we harp on all the time is opportunity cost. And thinking about how those fit together in this issue, there is an opportunity cost of inaction here that I don't think many people realize, and particularly Senator Green. And I think just making that clear in contacting him, that by sitting beside this issue and not doing anything, that people are suffering, people like Aiden. And just keeping that in mind and reminding him of that his decision not to do anything is causing harm.
Excellent. Let's take maybe 2 more questions or comments. One more here. Up here.
Hi, my name is Jeanette. I'm a former California resident. I moved here for my music career. I also have a very severe neurological condition called IIH, pseudotumor cerebrae. It caused me to have a stroke in 2008. I was a patient in California, had my cannabis card and everything. I gave that up to follow my dreams. I also have severe nerve pain from falling through a deck about 2.5 years ago. My back and everything is messed up. My question to you is, how much is it going to cost the patient to become legal, to get a card? Because I know certain states, the cost is outrageous. And it makes it impossible for people like myself on Social Security disability to be able to afford it.
The card in Tennessee will cost you $10.
Thank you. Amen to you. Thank you.
More importantly, the medicine will cost you $100 an ounce, not $500 an ounce. And we have one more, I think.
When my son was 22 months old, he had a stroke. And as a result of the injury to his brain, he's had epilepsy ever since. He doesn't have 300 seizures a week or anything like that. It's usually 1 to 3. But to keep him that way, he's under so much medication that he can't thrive. He can't. There's a little boy trapped inside of there. He's 4 now, that we know wants to come out. A few weeks ago, we had him at the EEG monitoring unit here at Vanderbilt, and they wanted to try to map his brain to see where the seizures were coming from, and they took him off almost all of his medication. And when he was unmedicated, he talked so much more, he sang so much more, he engaged, and then as we wrapped up and they put him back on the medicine, that all disappeared and went away again. This is like our last hope to be able to reduce his seizures and reduce his medication so that boy can come back out. We're at the point where if it can't be passed, we're going to have to move and go somewhere that will. We have to do what we have to do for our son. That's why I think it's so important that we all contact who we can contact and get this passed now. There are so many Tennesseans that could benefit from this that don't have a chance to just up and move. I'm not saying it's easy for us, but we have infrastructure with family that we have a chance to do that. And it's so important for the rest of Tennessee. It's like the buttons say, it's time.
I'd like to make 2 last points as you're contacting your legislators. In the early 70s, marijuana was classified at the federal level as a Schedule I drug. We all know that. Schedule I drugs supposedly have zero medical benefit, are highly addictive, and highly toxic. Cannabis doesn't meet any of those requirements. The state legislature, in its wisdom, when the feds ask every state to do a parallel scheduling of drugs, our legislature, in its wisdom, created a Schedule VI, as far from Schedule I as they could put it, and cannabis is in this state in Schedule VI by itself. I think that was a very intelligent move, and we should continue to make that point. We've already mentioned that program that ran in the 80s without incident. We have more history than most states do who want to pursue this, history to build on. What I'm looking for in the legislature now is a modern-day equivalent of Harry Byrne. If you don't know Harry Byrne's story, you should. He was a young first-term Republican who cast the deciding vote to give women suffrage in this state, and his single vote and our passage in this state gave women the right to vote for the entire country. That's who we need today. We need a Harry Byrne in this state who will stand up and say, I'm going to vote with my heart and with my mind. And it doesn't matter where the pack lies on this. I've got to do the right thing. So our state has produced Harry Byrnes in the past. I pray we have one we can touch in the legislature now. It's 8:30. Those of us who came to be with you will hang out a while if you want to visit. Thank you, Dr. Vogus, for this wonderful facility, and thank all of you for coming.